Dr. Velon of the XYOS Confederation pressed her scanning wand against the unconscious human male. Her primary mandibles clicked in a rhythm of deep concentration. The patient, identified as Sergeant Kale, had been pulled from a wrecked exploratory vessel. His vital signs were stable, but that was not what caused her lidless eyes to widen. It was the genetic data streaming across her console. She froze mid-scan, her delicate upper limbs trembling. The readout before her defied every principle of xenobiology she had spent 2 centuries mastering. She checked the scanner's calibration twice, then a third time. The machine was not malfunctioning. The data was accurate. She turned to her assistant, her voice a whisper of static. This human DNA should not exist. The assistant scurried over, its own mandibles clacking in confusion. It saw the same anomaly. The human's genetic code was not a static blueprint. It was a fluid, dynamic storm. Sections of the helix were rewriting themselves in real time, adapting to the minute changes in the medical bay's atmosphere and ambient radiation. It was not evolution over millennia. It was evolution occurring in the span of a single breath. Velon had studied countless species across the galaxy. Every one of them had a fixed genetic heritage, a chain of life passed down unchanged except for rare random mutations. This creature's body was actively editing its own fundamental instructions. It was as if the human was not just a product of its environment, but an active participant in its own design. She looked from the impossible data to the calm, still face of the soldier. The implications were staggering. She had to understand. She had to know what else about this species was a lie. Dr. Velon did not sleep. She analyzed. The data from Sergeant Kale consumed her every waking moment. The genetic fluidity she observed was not a random occurrence. It was targeted. When she introduced a simulated low-gravity stressor into his cellular environment, sections of his DNA relating to bone density and muscle structure began to flash with activity. They were not breaking down, they were preparing to fortify. She requested permission from the High Council to study the human further. Permission was granted, with a single skeptical directive. Observe, but do not interfere. The human male finally awoke. His name was Kale, and his reaction to waking in an alien medical bay was not fear, but quiet analytical observation. He asked about his ship, his crew. He showed no panic. Velon, maintaining her professional distance, ran another scan while he spoke. The results were even more profound. As he listened to her explain his situation, the language centers of his brain were not just translating her words. On a genetic level, his neural pathways were physically restructuring, creating new protein formations to better understand and categorize the information. His body was learning at the source code level. She had to share this. She compiled her findings, a report that would shake the Confederation to its core. Humans were not a fixed species. They were a species of perpetual conscious adaptation. Their history was not a record of static survival, but of constant internal reinvention. They did not simply endure their environments, they became them. And this one man, sitting calmly on her examination table, was living proof that humanity was far more dangerous, and far more magnificent, than they had ever imagined. The High Council of the XYOS Confederation convened an emergency session. Dr. Velon stood before them, her report projected on a vast holographic sphere. The 7 elders, ancient beings of immense intellect and patience, observed the swirling, chaotic data of the human genome. Their usual calm was fractured by soft clicks of disbelief. The lead elder, Zor, spoke, his voice like grinding stone. This suggests a species without a true form, a biological weapon without an off switch. Velon dared to correct him. It is not a weapon, Elder Zor. It is survival. Observe. She played a new recording. They watched as Sergeant Kale, now allowed limited movement, was shown a simple Zeal's puzzle box. He failed to open it physically, but his scan told a different story. His brain was not registering failure. It was creating new neural pathways, modeling the box's internal mechanisms. His DNA in his fingertips was subtly altering the density of his skin cells for a second attempt, making them more sensitive to pressure and texture. Another elder leaned forward. He adapts his very flesh to a problem he has never seen. His entire species does, Velon confirmed. Their history is one of relentless adaptation. From frozen wastelands to burning deserts, they do not just survive. They reshape the parameters of survival itself. This one man is a microcosm of that truth. His ancestors learned to run, then to climb, then to build. This one learns to solve. The council was silent. The human was not a fixed point to be analyzed and catalogued. He was a process, a becoming. They had thought humanity a young, primitive race. Now they saw the truth. Humanity was not at the end of its evolutionary journey. It was at the very beginning, armed with a biology that refused to accept a final destination. The galaxy had never encountered such a variable. The potential for chaos was terrifying, but the potential for greatness was beyond measure. The question was no longer what humanity was, but what it would choose to become. The decision from the High Council was swift and absolute. Sergeant Kale was to be returned to his people immediately. The risk of studying such a volatile biological entity was too great. Dr. Velon was ordered to prepare him for departure and to erase all her data. She complied with preparing him, but the knowledge she had gained could not be erased from her mind. As she led Kale to the transfer shuttle, she could not contain her professional curiosity. "Your people," she began, her voice a soft hum. "How do you govern this internal power? How do you prevent chaos?" Kale looked at the strange stardust vessel before him, considering her question with the same quiet intensity he gave everything. "We don't govern it, Doctor. We just live with it. Every generation we tell our kids they can be anything, an artist, a scientist, a soldier. And some of them actually do it. We call it potential." Velon's mind reeled. They had no control. No ancient genetic laws, no biological safeguards. They simply had a concept, a story they told their young. And that story, that belief, seemed to be the only directive their chaotic DNA needed. It was not evolution by random chance, it was evolution guided by will and ambition. The human genome was not a prison. It was a playground. She watched him walk up the ramp, a creature of infinite possibility. Before the hatch closed, he turned back. "Thank you for fixing me up, document." It was a simple statement, but Velon heard it differently now. He had not needed fixing. He needed a moment to understand his new environment so his body could begin the process of fixing itself. As the shuttle doors sealed, she knew she had witnessed something sacred. She had seen a being whose very blood was a promise of tomorrow. A tomorrow that his species would build with their own two hands, cell by adapting cell. Years passed in the XYOS Confederation. The incident with Sergeant Kale became a classified footnote, a story told in hushed whispers among xenobiologists. Dr. Velon's career flourished, her reputation distinguished, but a part of her always remained in that medical bay, staring at the impossible DNA. Then, a faint repeating signal was detected at the edge of explored space. It was a simple mathematical sequence, a galactic greeting, but the source was not a known XYOS ally or a peaceful merchant guild. The signal originated from a small, unremarkable star system on old star charts, a system with no official name in their language. The humans called it Sol. Velon was summoned before the council once more. The elders looked older, wearier. On the central hologram was the same data she had presented years ago, but now updated. It showed humanity's expansion. They had not conquered with overwhelming force. They had adapted. They had settled worlds with higher gravity by subtly altering bone structure over generations. They had learned to process new atmospheres. They had taken their internal chaos and turned it into a civilization. "They are here," Velon said. "Not as conquerors, but as neighbors." They sent this signal. Translates to, "We come in peace. We have much to share." The council was silent. The creature they had feared, the biological anomaly they had sent away, had returned, not as a threat, but as an ambassador of shared knowledge. They had not used their adaptability as a weapon of war, but as a tool for exploration and connection. Velon looked at the image of the human delegation leader on the screen. It was him, Sergeant Kale, older now, hair streaked with gray, but eyes holding the same calm, observant intelligence. He smiled, a strange human gesture she had come to understand. He had adapted. They all had. And in doing so, they had proven that their greatest strength was not their changing DNA, but the unchanging spirit that guided it. The galaxy had just become a far more interesting place. Please follow my channel for more videos. One click from you can change my life.